Hello, I'm KelpNeedsHelp. This is episode 3 of my series, Learning How to Play Minecraft PvP, where I dive into the deep end by joining a soup server at MunchyMC. There are so many things to say right at the start of learning that it's difficult to know where to begin. The chaos is all a part of it when starting anything fresh and new. One thing I'd like to briefly touch on and come back to later is an aside about culture and chat. First, as was glaringly apparent in the last video, I do not know how to change the UI settings of my chat box until much later. So it's comically in the way for a while. What I'd really like to touch on though is the nature and atmosphere of the chat itself. For the purpose of keeping things simple for now, I'm not going to go into the full nuanced discussion of this culture, but I will do so in a later episode. For now, simply, I think it's important to mention for anyone new that there are mainly two spheres of culture among social games. One is fast-paced and chaotic, while the other is slow-paced and orderly. PvP areas, and any high-intensity games or sports, all fall in this chaotic culture. If you are unfamiliar or don't often take part in such culture, there's understandable clash. However, having played in both spheres, I have seen the pros and cons of both. And ultimately at the end of the day most people are nice. They want to be nice. And they showcase these kindnesses in their own ways. I was aware that I could hide chat completely, but since I'm starting out wanting to learn, and my ultimate goal is to make friends, I wanted to make sure I had a chance to communicate. That hope was a bit of a shot in the dark because I can't read and play at the same time, but I'd watch back the footage and learn afterwards what was being said and found that very helpful. I missed many times when people were speaking to me, but on rare occasions I was able to catch it and respond. I am, for the video, blurring what is said because I believe it's polite to do. While it is a public sort of space, things said here may not be reflective of character outside this space, so I'd like to respect that. On occasion I may highlight conversations linked directly towards me, but that aside, I believe in keeping some privacy for this particular setting, even though it will mess with the look of the video, but given that I cannot read well either, I think it's a perfect representation of how I see in-game. With that out of the way, wow, it's so strange watching all this back with hindsight. Here I am fighting with the very people I would think of as friends, as a community, but here, I did not know them, and they didn't know me. Here I am, all alone, lost, and so incredibly bad. The main feelings diving in any fight I had was dead. It was an emotional time. There wasn't time to think. People could kill me in 2 swings before I could even align myself to hit them once. What's important about the beginning is that I was there. I found a place to stick with. A place for constant repetition. A place where people could come to know me. All I had to really do here was be, and observe. It felt tricky to even observe as everything seems to transpire so fast. But part of that is an observation in itself. Things move quickly. So quickly. I realized that the entire inventory was filled with soup. The only way to reach that soup was to open your inventory. How? How was that possible? It didn't even seem possible to reach all the soup in my hotbar, let alone the unthinkable of opening an inventory mid-fight. Opening inventory triggers some temporary memory lapses for me, so the realization that in order to have longer fights I was going to have to do this started to form the image of the mountain I would need to climb in learning. My obstacles were large but now seen, whereas previously they were unknown. A soup server, the very game itself, is fairly self-explanatory. It is a free-for-all fighting arena. The soup part is, in Minecraft context, instant heal. Each soup is an amount of health that you need to consume while fighting to save yourself. This is different to regular food, as other foods take time to gain back health. With soup it is instant. If you run out of soup, there are dispensers dotted around the map that provide more. The server keeps tally of how many kills and deaths you have. Kills are counted by the amount of damage done. Whichever player had the highest percentage amount of damage gets the kill. This results in getting kills even though your fight with that player could have ended a while ago. Each time you die you go back to spawn and can choose what are called kits. Each kit comes with a set of armor and an ability. At this point in time, as I am training, kills and death markers mean nothing to me. It is but decoration. At first I sampled some of the different kits, but as I came to realize, like before, I determined by my focusing bow in Hypixel, that I need to learn how to use basic soups before adding fancy tricks to the mix. I believe I stayed using a kit called Viper for a few weeks which deals poison damage, but I ended up using only the basic kit with no fancy abilities. I'm not there. All those elements are there for people to enjoy at a higher caliber than me. For me, I needed to observe so I could come up with my own goals and areas of focus. For now, it was to be there, to show up any day I could, and to try to understand why I was dying. That is my only goal. To answer the question, why am I dying? From watching professionals and casual fighters on YouTube, even just video games in general, there is a skill I wanted to acquire. While I have seen a lot of good players play well with scrolling through their hotbar, oftentimes the best way to play is to be able to press hotkeys to grab exactly what you want. If I could learn this, as many do not try to, I felt like I had a shot at being decent. My disability has me nerfed in a lot of ways, but if I could pull off what other players nerf themselves with, out of not wanting tedious practice for, it was potential for evening my ability among casual players. My keypad lended itself to being able to do this easier than a standard keyboard, so as long as I put in the work and repetition I would be on a path to reasonable success. This process may have been far easier if I had ever played a piano or instrument. As it was, I was set for a long road ahead of me. Being able to memorize which key was what and think about it, and utilize when needed, is a lot of things. Being able to do that quickly is another. All of this needs a ridiculous amount of practice for. While practicing hotkeys was a goal, at the start it wasn't my biggest focus. Things felt amiss with my keypad setup, and I later came to the decision to change where the keys were to better suit my brain. After switching to that, I started feeling more comfortable and my practice went further. At the start though, I was just getting used to everything, taking it all in and trying to make sense of it. The changing keys happened in sync with more learning and observations. Early on, the first key I focused on was my key to drop the soup bowl after use. I changed it probably 3 times before settling on its current position. I believe in the beginning I set it to my pinky finger in fear of having it closer to a dominant finger I would be more prone towards accidentally dropping things like my sword. The constant use, however, proved too laborious and slow for my pinky finger to keep up with, so I made a change to my middle finger, with my pointer finger being the one to open my inventory. Each time I made the switch was an initial setback, but ultimately ended for the better and is something I wouldn't have been able to know without the experience of fighting every other day. Mental fortitude is needed for doing simple things over and over again poorly, with the hope that one day you'll magically be better somehow. I have done this work in many other areas in my life, so this concept was not new to me. I was in for the long haul. That said, the frustration and emotions felt throughout learning was still palpable. The beginning is always the most turbulent, the highest highs and lowest lows. While failing in spectacular fashion, you also get to see rapid improvement that isn't anything like the plateau of the middle portion of learning. Everything is new and exciting with harsh limits and pitfalls. There is etiquette in fighting and social cues that I tried to be mindful of but also had no clue about. In general, I tried to fight one-on-one unless attacked by multiple people. I often tried to make sure the person fighting with me wanted to fight and would try to communicate this by dancing in front of them to gauge interest. I would later be called out for this, as this was not proper etiquette. There are only so many ways to move your Minecraft character, shifting up and down is one of them, and for fighting it is used to communicate friendly, not wishing to fight, or truce, sentiments. So I was sending very mixed signals for about a month prior to being called out for it. More on that when relevant. For now you can enjoy me being blissfully ignorant of my actions. I was willing and happy to fight anyone that would let me, however not everyone held that same attitude. While I did anticipate people, particularly good players, not even wanting to bother with someone at my level, I was actually surprised by how many players simply logged on to be on, and wouldn't fight at all, at least not while I was on. Their scores certainly reflected many fights, but a lot of times I was on they would group in spots and stand about without engaging in fights at all. To me this was surprising, as I had thought and was using the space as a resource only for fighting, but this display showcased how much it was a social hangout space for many, and that's pretty fascinating in its own right. The whole ecosystem I entered has points of flow that will be the topic of my next episode on where my place is in the food chain, and why it's important. Thanks for watching this minnow make their first splash into a fighting server. See you next time.